That would be good to confirm. Okay, Jack, we are live, and good morning to our viewers out there. This is the Point Reyes podcast, Watching Humans, Skyjack podcast.
Depending on your mood, you can call it anything you like. Just show up. Thanks, folks.
It's interesting how they overlap. Once again, we have overlap. We are going to be talking about things that involve Point Reyes National Seashore, but as usual, because the dairy industry is involved, we're going to be talking about the planet. We're going to talk about moral, ethical issues, and we're going to be talking about, what I think would be interesting to talk about is human beings using their intelligence to lie to themselves about things in order to not change. I'm going to bring in a little bit of science into today's show. To talk about the dairy industry rather than just be emotional and philosophical. So I hope that that'll spring some interesting discussions from our viewers. Viewers, you're highly encouraged to chat, type in the chat column, and we may even take some calls. Jack, my co-host of the Tree Spirit Project, say good morning to everyone.
Good morning to everyone. And good morning to Ray Cooper, who's our very first, always reliable listener. So thank you, Mr. Ray. You always have good stuff to say. You've been a friend of mine for a bunch of years
Morning, Ray.
On the Vegan Path. And we will be bringing in, folks, in case you want more than just the usual man rant club here. Leah Wilborn will be joining us shortly. And she is an animal rights advocate, and also happens to be the farmed animal campaigner for In Defense of Animals. So she'll join us, and it's a fun tension. We were discussing three-way kind of what today's show would be, as we always are thorough planners. And Skyler, he's always going on about science and facts and information, getting it correctly and all this nonsense. And I just, love to riff. So we make an interesting mix where I think both together can be good. And good morning.
Your description of Leah, she's basically a insane hippie. She thinks that humans should be compassionate and reasonable, and that we got to get these people.
I think I'll let her do it better than I can, but she's going to discuss kind of what animal rights even means. I mean, we're kind of, am I still here?
You sound fine, but you froze.
Okay, well, that's fine. As long as if it freezes, that's probably on my end, but as long as you can hear me. Anyway, Leah, I think, also wants to discuss today what animal rights even means. What do you mean give animals rights? Rights for what? Why? And this is for a general audience, which is kind of what I'm always pitching to, assuming it's not just vegans. I hope it isn't just vegans. God bless the vegans on this show.
Let's set the stage for why we even chose this, because it's a little bit similar to last week. There's a little bit of a fear of redundancy, but I think it's different. And the inspiration, well, I have a lot of inspiration for it because it really maps how I changed. But we know somebody who wrote something. And when I read what that person wrote, I thought it was sarcasm because it was so insane. And then it turns out that person was being serious. And so it's this amazing ability that human beings, even the ones that we might consider intelligent amongst ourselves, it's easy to call human beings stupid because we do things like destroy our own habitat and things like that. But I can't deny we obviously have the ability to be intelligent. It's just what we do with that intelligence that is disturbing, such as thinking that being intelligent means that we can treat other living creatures however we feel like it. Now,
to quote Tom Lehrer of Werner von Braun, once the rockets go up, who comes where they come down? That's not my department, says Werner von Braun. So we can build rockets and blow each other up with incredible intelligence. But how intelligent is that really?
Yeah. Look what I can do. Now we have Elon Musk ushering us into, well, he's basically proving how robotic we've become, because we're going to be very easy to replace. I don't know what value humans provide anymore. So I don't even know how heartbreaking it is that we're going to be replaced by robots. We've become robots.
I'm tempted to take that bait, but I'm not going to do that yet.
Okay.
He's I just want one quip. He started a boy band. Did you hear it? It's a punk rock band. It's called Felon Musk and the Swastikars. Did you hear that one?
See, once again, you could have been serious and I would have bought it. That's how crazy it is now.
Not bloody likely.
So
and, Paula, a regular, also just threw in, we learn to follow the rules so early in life, and that's so true. And for me, I always use the phrase cultural conditioning. So it's not a matter of blame. We're all conditioned in our cultures. And, for me, it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I got that me, an animal lover who had never heard a cow, if someone said, here's a knife, there's a cow in the field, go get him, I would never dream of that while eating beef, while eating a hamburger, that cow. Crazy. Cultural conditioning.
You mean you were comfortably oblivious to a vision of where the food came from?
Or to use your song, I think, from Pink Floyd, comfortably numb.
Yeah, and it's not just that. You and I both probably described ourselves as animal lovers as we were kids, maybe nature lovers. And yet I can look back and realize that we had this weird dividing line amongst the rest of the animal kingdom about who deserved respect and who didn't. And I'll take that a step further. Now I look at how we treated our dogs that we supposedly loved, and I'm a little bit ashamed of that too. So
how do you mean?
I just the way I look at dogs now and consider what a dog's needs compared to how I was raised to consider them is different. But having said that, how we treated dogs was clearly higher than how we would treat a working animal or a farm animal.
Right. And I guess, we should probably bring Leah into this conversation. Yep. This is her wheelhouse. But for me, there's kind of two separate but absolutely interpenetrating issues. And that is how we treat animals and the ethical argument, which ultimately, I think for most people, I know Ray Cooper entered into this thing because of caring about animals. I didn't. I came in from the environmentalist perspective, which aligns me with many of the people in our Point Reyes group, which, is about the environment and, freeing the elk so that you don't kill the wild animals there for the cattle industry. But the environmentalists, and I'll pick on one group, 350.org, who did great things for raising awareness about fossil fuels and a warming climate, but they won't touch, as will the Sierra Club National does good things, but they won't touch meat head on, which is to say raising cows for human consumption, which is dairy and beef, is a major driver, arguably the major driver of the climate crisis. And that's honestly, I'm giving a talk on the 6th, and I'll actually be touching on it on March 1st for the Thule Elk Celebration Party, the Freedom Party in Mill Valley, which I hope everybody attends. It's free to the public, Saturday, March 1st. But I always bring up the cow in the room, the proverbial cow in the room, because it's everything. It's not just cruelty and ethics, it's the climate crisis. And if you don't talk about that and only talk fossil fuels, we'll never get anywhere. And arguably, we won't get anywhere anyway, but you have to address the cow in the room.
Let me give one more enticer to the viewers so you know what to expect today. I'm going to read a statement prepared especially for the show by a veterinarian who wanted to chime in on it. We're going to have, it's not just a crazy vegan like us.
Speak for yourself.
Right. I'm also going to read from 2 scientific reports about the effects of what is done to dairy calves in the dairy industry. Because we've become so robotic, we need to read about things that should be obvious to us. Now, the other source of inspiration, when I made the Shame of Point Reyes, someone who saw it came up to me and told me, I have a friend who went on a shuttle through Point Reyes. I guess they had a program where they were trying to cut back on the amount of traffic, so they'd actually have like a group tour thing. And the guide, as they went past the calf hutches, told them that those were there to protect the baby cows from their mothers. Protect babies from their mothers. So it is active. It's not passive propaganda. It's active propaganda taking place even within Point Reyes National Seashore.
By the way, Skyler, I'm catching you off guard here. I should have asked you this yesterday, but do you have a picture of the calf hutches? Because I don't know that a lot of people, or at least they'd love to have this not assume people know what a calf hutch even is, because there's a veal crate and a calf hutch, and what are we talking about? I only learned about them through your film.
Yeah,
some of those things out there at Point Reyes.
Well, and I thought that they were veal crates when I went up to them. I mean, they're basically the same thing, just a little bit of a different purpose. And yet, even we'll get to this later today, that purpose actually overlaps.
Yeah. I want to. Should we?
Yeah.
Leah in. Okay, so Leah Wilborn is coming on. She is an animal I consider a fiery, which is she speaks the truth and doesn't compromise, and inspires me to do the same as an animal rights advocate. We'll discuss advocate versus activist, and she's also happens to be the farmed animal campaigner for indefensive animals. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks for
Hey,
having
Leah.
me.
I'm gonna load up some images while you two take it. Welcome to the show, Leah.
Thank you.
So, Leah, were you able to listen in from the green room, as it were?
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add? I'm sure you might have something to say.
Oh my goodness. Where to begin?
Exactly.
Well, I guess the first thing that always comes to mind when we're talking about, how we've been conditioned, and we all have, right? In this culture, it's acceptable what's our dogs and cats and wild animals and animals that we don't contribute to their exploitation and killing every day. Those are the ones that we care about. And then we've just arbitrarily chosen different species who happen to be gentle and who don't fight back as much. But of course, the more we breed them, the more they become that way. It's speciesism. It's along the same lines of, it's very much related to racism and, sexism, all the isms, because it's choosing one group and saying they're different. Let's not care about them because we can use them. So we've chosen cows, pigs, and chickens arbitrarily in this culture to use and exploit and kill for profit, for taste buds. And back in the day, we all believed that we needed to eat these animals for protein and for nutrition. And back, thousands of years ago, certainly, if we needed to hunt animals to survive, that's one thing, but that's not the reality in the vast majority of the world population right now. So anyone that has access to a grocery store and or plant foods like beans and rice and vegetables and fruit and nuts and seeds, very simple, affordable foods, we don't have to be doing this any longer. So there's two different kinds of speciesism. There's the humans, and then there's the other animals below us. So we think that we are the most intelligent species. We get to dominate. We can dominate all of them. But then there's cats and dogs and some wild animals, and then there's all the rest of them.
Hierarchies.
Yeah. So it's just these two different, and it's a mindset, it's a human supremacy mindset. And that's what I think is just really important to talk more about, because especially in this Point Reyes group, and all these environmental groups, we're so up in arms about, look at what's happening to the wild animals out there. It's tragic, but not connecting that, well, if they don't deserve to be harmed by humans, why do these other animals deserve to be harmed by humans when they don't need to be for unnecessary products?
Well, it's a never-ending excuse-making cycle, Leah, because they will change immediately on that to justifying harming wild animals to support this horrific industry that abuses other animals. I mean, people that have decided that they're going to defend this no matter what will flip-flop all over the place as badly as a Trumpster would. And we had an example that partially inspired us today of using that excuse of, our ancestors hunted, or ancestors did this or did that. You're talking about a time where people found ways to find caloric intake. And if you're going across the plains and all you've got is a buffalo, then, it's not the weirdest thing. But history always conveniently leaves out the vegetation and the grains that were consumed, and pretends that we were running around like we're wolves, like we are actual carnivores, and we actually had some sort of an ecological role managing populations of herbivores. And that's just ridiculous. We want to pretend that we are like wolves today in order to justify gluttonous behavior. And we see the effects of it in the diabetic obesity problem plaguing the planet, even as meat consumption increases at the same rate that these health problems are increasing. We obviously aren't meant to consume and behave the way that wolves do. And we're paying the physical price for pretending that that's what we are.
And may I just say that I think it's about 60 to 70% of the animals on the planet are herbivores, the strongest animals on the planet, right? Elephants, gorillas, apes, rhinoceros, eat plants. So that right there, and when we see a squirrel on the road, do we start salivating and rush to tear into its flesh to eat it raw?
Oh, the roadkill? Roadkill's my favorite.
You vegans, you're so obnoxious, always pushing your agenda, always with the sarcasm. Look how unhealthy we three vegans are. Oh, wait a second. We're actually quite healthy. Wait a second. Maybe we don't need to eat meat to be healthy. Is that possible, guys? Have we seemed to wandered away from the calf hutches discussion?
No,
I do want to keep pushing the scientific side of it, but I'm able to talk about something you just said and be scientific about it, because when you look at the food pyramid or the energy pyramid, you got the producers at the bottom of it. And because it's the beginning, that's where you have the most efficient form of consuming that caloric energy. And then you have your secondary consumers and your tertiary consumers. At the top, the keystone predators, well, they're getting the least amount of efficiency in terms of consuming the protein and the energy that started at the bottom with your herbivores. Now, guess what goes along with these apex predators that have to eat more to get the same amount? Well, their populations are smaller, because if you had a whole bunch of wolves running around needing to eat other creatures, then the other populations would get wiped out. Now, that's what's happened when we herbivores, or at best omnivores, pretend like we are apex predators, because our population is out of control on the level of mosquitoes. And yet we are still eating as though we are balancing the mix the way that an apex predator would. That by itself explains why the planet is dying.
Yep.
Yeah. And also, I kind of sometimes, if I'm not annoyed, I feel sorry for these, really macho guys, muscled up or tattooed up, which is a stereotype because there's no absolute to the stuff. And I'm just going to eat steak. I'm going to live on steak. And it's like, oh my God, like as if cavemen or paleo man ate only meat. I mean, it's just, we're living in this industrialized world, so cut off from nature, mostly urbanized populations now. 70% of humanity is urbanized, pretending we're, on the veldt. And even then we're wrong in that assumption that early man ate so much more meat. It's completely illogical on so many levels. I just shake my head sometimes at the arguments that just people, as you were saying, Skyler, just desperately want to hang on, and they'll come with any reason. It's as mad as a Trumpster, although Sledge here comments as madly as a Trumpster, as madly as a Trumpster would. Come on, he says, not almost as bad.
And the thing that's often left out or that's not said right off the bat, because usually if you start talking about this with people, the first thing is, well, we need meat to survive. And understandably, they're saying that because of the marketing, but also doctors. Now, doctors are only given like a handful of hours in their entire training on nutrition. So they are not the experts on nutrition when the top nutrition organizations in the world, like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and then you have the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and the Canadian version, the European version of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics have all stated that a well-planned plant-based diet is healthy for all stages of life, including infancy, pregnancy, athletes, and the elderly. So that is so important to get out of the way and to just like say to people, because they're just thinking of their doctors and their parents and the marketing that they see everywhere. Marketing that says we need meat for protein and milk for calcium, et cetera, et cetera. We need fishes for our omega-3s, when we can get that also in plants and walnuts, and there's so many sources of that. So it's not talked about enough because people don't believe us.
I'd like to ask our viewers, whom of you can name a mammal that by design doesn't use its mother in the developmental years of life? Or for that matter, seeks isolation in any way, shape, or form? I mean, there's a lot of mammals.
Meaning that when mammals are born, they want to be and need to be and want to be near their mothers.
Well, I'm not even saying that much. I want someone to provide me an example of a mammal that doesn't meet what you just said. Mm-hmm. And I'll let that marinate. Would anyone like to hear what the veterinarian wanted to share?
Yes. Are we naming the veterinarian?
Her name is Amy Allen. Very much appreciate her contribution.
And this is discussing the practice of putting baby calves taken from their mothers and putting them in the plastic sheds that we've seen at Point Reyes Seashore, correct?
Yeah. And she also... One second, let me...
And I'll meanwhile read Ray Cooper's comment. He says, specifically, if you include the idea that all animals deserve the right to be free from exploitation, that's the most controversial notion and the dawn of humanity.
So on that, thank you, Ray. Exactly. And I'd just like to say to that brings up this whole animal advocate versus animal rights advocate. What do we call ourselves? Well, all these folks who are, speaking up for the tule elk, the wild animals, they would probably call themselves animal advocates. We hear the word activists and we think a little crazy, a little extreme. And then we hear the word animal rights and people like to, those are the crazy ones. Well, in the same way that we're advocating for the rights of the tule elk to not be harmed by humans, that's all that I'm saying. Is I advocate for the rights of all animals to not be exploited and killed for human use when we don't need to be doing that.
And
so exploitation and slaughter is at the heart of all of it. Yes, so we don't.
And to buttress that, what you just said, Leah, Ray says the mother-child bond between mammals is obvious to anyone, and it's as close to science as you can get, and it's still very powerful and emotional.
And while I agree with Ray, when he declares it as obvious, if someone is embedded in or still indoctrinated, then they'll just say, well, that's an opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree, Skyler. Yeah, it's like, prove it. Oh, yeah, that's your opinion. I totally agree. Even though, of course, we share his opinion, that's not science for the people who are disconnected from their emotion and want, quote unquote, proof.
But you know how you prove it? Instead of just closing your eyes, you go and you put yourself through it, which is what I did to myself. And I realized, okay, there's no way around this BS. I stopped one day in Point Reyes, instead of just driving past the veal hutches, the dairy baby isolation pens, and I got out and I walked up and I took a look inside to see what was happening. And it's not good, people. And I challenge anyone who is contesting what I'm saying, not to just take a glance. Stay there and try to wrap your head around that being your existence.
May I add to that? Just this morning, very timely, in this Point Reyes National Seashore Restoration Group, an email went out and I shared a couple of videos. Both of them were yours, Jack's Sad World video, Skyler's Point Reyes the Fence music video, and they're both showing just a hint of what goes on in the dairy industry. And there were responses from folks in the group who aren't as vocal about animal rights, but wow, I think more people need to see this. It could really change people's views. And isn't that what we're trying to do, is change people's views? That no amount of talking about facts and intellectualizing has the effect of directly seeing finally what really happens and connecting with the animals, which most people don't do because it's also purposely kept hidden. However, it's all over YouTube now. Thank God, in a way, for technology. Thank God for filmmakers who show the mother cows trying to chase after their babies. I just shared a clip the other day of a little baby calf had a little rope around his paw and was being dragged away. And the mother cow was sniffing at the calf and was trying to keep the calf with her. And the farmer was whipping the calf. And even while she was being whipped to go away, she did not stop. And she was bellowing out in anguish. If more people saw that, they can't ignore it.
Well, they can, unfortunately.
They can.
I hate to
Some people will be more affected.
If you show that footage to a lay audience, they will be moved. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about convincing the farmers who have a financial stake in it and will deny it to the very end. That's not my target audience. It's the general audience, like Stephen Axelrod from Switzerland, who is bidding us a late good morning. He's not a vegan activist. I know him from other parts of the world. But if you see that footage, anybody with a heart, and he lives in Switzerland, which is kind of like European to America. It's like, oh, just a few cows out in the lovely, pastures with Heidi. It's a very different look. But the reality still is you have to take baby cows away from their mommies, and it's a cruel thing to do.
And as a vegan, I started to find out about the environmental destruction caused by animal agribusiness. I had found out about maybe I could be healthier, but I didn't change until I actually saw. I read it first, and then I looked into it, and then I saw not just that terrible thing about the dairy industry, but the mutilations without painkillers, the extreme confinement, and inside slaughterhouses. Nobody wants to look at that. Of course we don't, because then we might have to change what we do. But that's what changed me finally. And I see people change in an instant. When I've done outreach on the street with Anonymous for the Voiceless, an international animal rights organization, peaceful, all they do is they show footage of the standard practices in all industries that exploit animals. And that cuts through all the bullshit. People see it. Yes, many walk away. It all depends on where they are in their life, but some are stopped in their tracks and they say, thank you. I've had a feeling my whole life that something was wrong, but I've never seen this before. I've never had people actually talk to me about this. Us talking to them might be the first and only time that anyone talks to them about the truth of what's really going on. And a lot of people are changed. Yes, we're planting seeds. We have no idea if they're going to change in an instant or not, but we have planted a seed that might stick with them for the rest of their lives, which certainly stuck with me the first time I saw the truth. I didn't change right away. I changed soon after that. And now I'm ashamed to say that I didn't change right away, but
I think I told you guys this when I first went to my first animal sanctuary. When I first saw Cowspiracy, was the movie that put these crazy ideas about, eating cows is bad and who knows how we cut down forests to raise them. Anyway, I went to Animal Place, which is up in the Grass Valley area, northeast of Sacramento. And there was a young woman, God bless her, at a sanctuary, and we were standing near a wooden veal crate. I didn't know what that was, hadn't seen one before. I heard of veal, but not a veal crate. And she said, the veal industry is the dairy industry. And I remember going, what the heck does that mean? And this is a young woman who wanted to explain it to us tourists. And I still didn't get that. And then I realized, of course, looking back on this a decade ago, all of this is completely hidden from the public. Mm-hmm. And even lied about if challenged. So Leah is talking about this wonderful group, Anonymous for the Voiceless, which just shows TV footage. I'm just repeating what you said, Leah. I want people to understand. They call them a cube of truth. Mm-hmm. They just show true footage of what the industry has to hide, or they would be driven out of business, not by us activists, but just by the average person who says, oh my God, that's horrible. I had no idea. how brutal this stuff is. I would never want to treat any animal that way. I'd rather go hunt Bambi in the woods and blow his head off or her head off rather than subject animals to what we do in the industry.
Well, yeah, but they also address it's not just about the suffering for animal products. It's about the basis of it all, which is our human supremacy mindset and exploitation. So hunting for Bambi when you don't have to is the same mindset, the human supremacy mindset, right? So it's also, they also talk about and show that all, for instance, wool, all sheep are slaughtered for their wool, and animals in entertainment, those animals in rodeos, they're all then sent to slaughterhouses, racehorses sent to slaughterhouses. They're used and then they're killed because they're seen as it's okay for us to use them. And that's the underlying issue. It's actually not okay anymore. That's what we need to kind of start getting across to people.
Well, we don't have enough wild animals left to be hunting and gathering like, paleo diet folks want to. There is no way. There's too many humans and not enough wild animals left. What's that stat I always like to bring up? It's 4% of the biomass, terrestrial animals, 4% of the biomass on Earth of mammals is now wild, in the wild. 4%. 36% of the biomass is human beings on the planet. And that leaves 60% of, again, terrestrial biomass of mammals is cows and pigs and chickens, mostly cows, of course, by weight. So we have destroyed pretty much all the Earth's wild animals already. Not it's going to happen. It has already happened. And we've converted to wild animals, confined, bred, and I would say tortured for profit, for consumption.
Well, we're over 30 minutes in and haven't touched on the scientific aspect yet.
Go, Skyler. Go, science, man.
We also have some good comments. Maybe we'll circle back to them. Like Stephen, your friend Stephen, he could be joking, or he could be, but
he's joking.
I'm sure he's joking. But the fact that as a child you're told that that's a milk cow, is why not go a step further and be like, and this one gives you this flavor and that one gives you that flavor. That's what the clover signs that you see everywhere would have you think, with the dancing babies with their smiling mother going through a green field, and there's a rainbow of flavors coming out of their bodies.
Think of what the equivalent graphic would be for African slaves in this country if you did that. Right? Dancing with their parents, having a great time.
Well, they had that back in the day. They had the cartoon characters of the slaves. Yeah,
that's true. They did. Right.
Yeah, there's really not a limit to what we humans have done. Sledge, I'm going to go ahead and read yours because I thought about this a lot. It's the human superiority thing, us just saying, look what we can do. I've had this discussion with women often. I was like, man, that period of time where it was more important to become equal to men in the workforce than to have a bond with a baby, that like women stopped breastfeeding, they switched to formula, they wanted to be in the office rather than bonding with the baby, and I understand the hypocrisy of the convenience that, well, the man, can't breastfeed, so you're off the hook. But whether you think, when you hear some mothers talk about the incredible bond formed when the breastfeeding takes place, the attachment of holding your baby and something going between the two of them during the breastfeeding process, the fact that our species would willingly omit that for social status gives you a hint of how we can justify being so cruel for other excuses and to other species. Leah, you want to chime in as our female panelist?
Well, just something that comes to mind that you all know about, I think, but just last week, this was surprising. But in this Point Reyes issue, there's a paper called the Point Reyes Light, and it came out with this article that was, again, kind of from the rancher's perspective and feeling sorry for them, that they might have to leave. And it's very much seemed like a pro-rancher article, but tucked in towards the end of it was, in fact, can I just read? Can I read a little?
Sure.
If it's short.
Yeah. So, okay. In this very, very long piece, suddenly I find it says, animal rights activists have a markedly different view of farms like this one. In their eyes, dairy farmers are cogs in an inhumane food production system that consigns animals to a lifetime of exploitation and misery. I'd like to add a very short life that ends at the slaughterhouse. Some of their claims, dairy farmers concede, reflect standard industry practices. Cows are impregnated repeatedly. This is in the article. Quote, by artificial insemination, forcible impregnation, and have their newborns taken away at birth. Female calves are confined to individual hutches and have their horn buds cauterized, aka burned off, with no painkillers, of course, at just a few months old. And male calves are not so lucky and sent off to slaughter. And then it just goes back to let's feel sorry for the ranchers. But I have to say, even that is progress. Because even the Point Reyes Light, you know, a writer at the Point Reyes Light decided to bring this up, that we're so outraged about what's happening to the Tule elk, and yet, the standard practices in the dairy industry, even worse.
I'd have to read that to actually believe it appeared in the Point Reyes Light.
Right.
I mean,
well, it appeared at the end.
It appeared. Well, there you go, Skyler. For me, it's like half full. Wow, they actually did something. You're like, yeah, at the very end, it's BS. It's half empty.
But people don't read to the end anymore, so it's almost like not putting it in at all.
Yeah.
What's reading? I'm sorry, what's reading? You mean watching a video?
Exactly.
Yeah. Honest Outer writes, the objective fact is this: the closest biological relative to man is simians. Simians are frugivores.
Frugivores.
We share virtually the same digestive system with them, so raw, plant-based fruits are ideal.
I was told that we are actually not even supposed to be eating legumes and things like that, that we are, in fact, just frutivores. I don't know, but I tell you what we definitely aren't is a carnivore. I'm sorry.
Right, we bite and grind.
Yeah,
people. I've seen a deer
tearing into the flesh of an animal. Like, are we craving tearing into the flesh and bones and eating meat raw? No, we put spices, we put plants onto, and we cook the meat to make it taste better. None of us want to eat raw meat from the bone of an animal. I mean, maybe some carnivores do because they of the whole mythology behind it, but we're not craving. Obviously, the teeth tell us, but we're not chasing after animals on the street because we can't wait to taste them.
And all of this whole discussion, the last 10 sentences that I started with an Honest Outer putting in a good comment, completely for me irrelevant. It doesn't even matter because it's not what we need to do today. So I don't even go to the historical argument because it's academic. It's academic. But
that's the arguments they use so much of the time.
I know,
but you have to debunk it.
If someone says that in front of me, I say, what year is it? How many humans are on the earth? All of this is silly. It's just silly.
Right. If you go and you witness the horror that we've created, the suffering, I mean, this is just planet horror at this point because of our insistence of pretending that this is what we're supposed to eat. You go and you look at that, even if you were a carnivore, if you're the most intelligent species, you should say, okay, I'm a carnivore, but I need to figure out how to change this. We're herbivores saying, well, it has to be this way.
So my pet peeve with the Point Reyes issue is I got involved in it not just for Point Reyes.
Well, yeah.
Meaning for me, it's a microcosm of the larger issue of what cattle does. Well, you're saying, of course, Leah, because you're on our side of it, you're deep in it. But many people on our group who are well-intended, hardworking environmentalists just don't want to hear it. I've been told, Jack, stop bringing veganism into it.
So
and this is the entire, let me finish. This is the entire reason I got into it in the first place, which is it's a chance to argue the global issue of vegan, don't eat beef or dairy specifically, along with other animals, but certainly environmentally, if you're environmentalists at Point Reyes, don't eat anything from a cow. And Point Reyes is a chance to bring that issue forward locally. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, for everyone who tuned in for the show to hear the science, I'm starting it now. Our veterinarian is not only a veterinarian, but a boarded specialist in internal medicine. She states,
Amy Allen.
Amy Allen.
Thank you.
A recent article suggesting that veal calves are isolated to prevent infection was particularly striking. The claim contradicts well-established biological principles of neonatal immunity. Bovine calves are born agaglobulemic. My God, way to make me feel dumb on the spot. Meaning they lack maternal antibodies due to the structure of the bovine placenta, which does not allow passive immunity transfer in utero.
Wow.
Instead, they rely entirely on colostrum, the first milk produced by the mother, which is rich in immunoglobulins. And she has the periodic scientific elemental breakdown of these, necessary to protect against pathogens until the calf's immune system matures at approximately 8 to 12 weeks of age. There's a couple of more paragraphs, and I just want to say thank you, Amy. Like, I had to push her to be scientific about it because she actually didn't like how cold that sounded, because like us, she has reached the real, she's at the point in her life she understands, babies need their moms. Whereas we as herbivores pretending to be carnivores want to argue backwards and try and justify taking babies from mothers in order to continue our absurd lifestyles. Now, that was also one of the first things that struck me when I went and visited those baby pens. It's not just that they don't have their moms. They don't have anyone.
Yeah.
They don't have anyone or anything. And I've spent the night out there too. These are days old, people. Days. You just entered Earth, and this is your experience. Isolation, fear, darkness, cold.
Freezing cold out there.
And humans are saying, yeah, but this is what nature intended. Are you kidding? Like, how desperate do you have to be to believe your own lies? And so here comes the dairy industry's disgusting lies that this is done. One excuse is to protect the babies from their mothers. Two, well, now you can't even have them next to each other because of the risk of them being infected, because they are susceptible to infections at that young age. And guess why? Because they were deprived of the colostrum that nature had solved the problem for.
Yep.
How twisted can you get? Ranchers are sick people.
Well, I would say it's the entire industry is sick, and then people come out of that industry like we all were raised to eat foods, to eat these animals and think we're animal lovers. It's the whole. I go at it systemically, and let me illustrate to add propagandistic. Let me get fancy here. Propagandistic insult to baby cow injury. These plastic sheds, which are 2.5 feet tall by 3 feet wide, that these poor calves taken from their moms are shoved into. The top of that thing, embedded in the plastic, it says cow nursery.
Calf nursery.
Calf nursery. Thank you. Calf nursery. Like, we're going to put you in a box out in a cold field in the winter with no mom around, and you can't touch any other animal at all, including another baby cow. And that's called a calf nursery.
Oh, well,
That's
you know what? If I would have read that, that's what went wrong. I didn't see that. Otherwise, the marketing would have worked on me.
Oh, I thought this animal was being tortured. No, it's a nursery. It's okay.
Unfortunately, that's almost how easy it is. If you want to believe, if you don't want to change, and that's really what it comes down to. That's why it disgusts me that we have people in our own Point Reyes group still buying these products. There's no good reason. It's selfish gluttony. It's selfish gluttony. There is no good reason at all. And I mean, oat milk is wonderful, by the way. I love oat milk. Out of all the alternatives,
too. Yeah, it's so easy to make.
And as a man, you don't look like you're expecting twins for continuing to eat that late in life.
And organic is seen as somehow not only more regenerative, but is somehow more humane. It has absolutely nothing to do with humane. unlike the typical dairy cow that spends its life inside a concrete floored enclosure, this is from that article, the Nunes Farms cows pass their days lolling around bucolic green pastures, except for a few months a year when they shelter in a well-ventilated loafing barn. Like many of his neighbors, William has embraced regenerative grazing practices. He partitions his fields into smaller paddocks and rotates the herd to let grasslands rest and recover. And twice a day, the cows file into the milking parlor, where computer-calibrated vacuums extract several gallons of warm milk from each udder. Sounds so nice, doesn't it? This is just, you hear this everywhere.
So this is Skyler molesting a young calf. I'm sorry, comforting a young animal who's isolated. And then on the right side of that frame, up in the corner, there is this little field of, field of torture. And an honest doubter says it's just I think the word he meant to say is grab, kidnap, and lifelong torture nursery. Mm-hmm. And it's not that lifelong. It's very short torture nursery. They die very soon, but before maturity.
So one of the things that's important for people to know is that the calf, that's a calf rescued from the dairy industry. And the ones on the right are from the Mendoza Ranch in Point Reyes. I took that image. They're the same age and 17 days old. And that one on the left was running, exploring. You know, I hate to sound dumb and naive, but after my first experience seeing these ones on the right, it was actually astonishing for me to see a 17-day-old calf running at full speed, like easily outrunning me, walking around, sniffing, exploring, wanting to say hi to the horses next door, things like that, you know, acting like a sentient being. And here's what the existence of these ones on the right, in the best case scenario, the best example, the best dairy farmers on the planet, according to their own words, that's as good as it gets. That's what you do to those creatures.
So in other words, we're so conditioned to not know what a cow actually does because we only see them on farms, that although those farmers, the good ones, let's say, don't beat them or torture them or hurt them or whip them, even sticking them in that place or even sticking them on a feedlot is basically a type of forced confinement where they're not allowed to run about the way normally animals would, even domesticated animals.
Well, cut right even more to the chase than even the confinement. If we just tell the average Joe, did you know that all male baby cows in the dairy industry are slaughtered?
Could we see Leah's face as she says these things? I'm serious. Just, it'll have more impact.
I thought my
yeah, sorry, there's a delay as this is
yeah.
uploading.
Thank you, Skyler. No worries. I appreciate your bringing the pictures in. Oh, Leah, God, that's a still picture of Leah, I guess.
Oh, I look so good, don't I?
No, so cute and friendly. Look at you. You're younger than I remember. I thought you were 20. You look about 2 months there.
I'm confined and trapped and being exploited. Yeah. Anyway, it's just part of the narrative that we have to get out to the public.
Well, our veterinarian...
Anytime that you mention the dairy industry, you have to mention, in the same way that we need to all these folks in this Point Reyes group who think Point Reyes, what they're doing out there is bad. That means I need to go buy another organic milk from somewhere else. Ugh. No. All male baby cows in the dairy industry are slaughtered. I mean, and so are their mothers. It's just...
As you and I say, let's put a point in this or underline it, Leah. You and I talk about this. If you're going to ask people, hey, if you want to stop eating one product that's especially cruel, don't say beef, say dairy. Dairy is more cruel a product than beef. And, I have a dear sweet brother who's been vegetarian 35 years, so I can't criticize the guy. He is 25 years ahead of me about any of this. But, is in that kind of, I call it like the 60s, 70s hippie generation, not that he's a hippie, who went vegetarian. God bless him, way ahead of me. I cannot criticize. I won't criticize. I would be a hypocrite to do so. But the conditioning is strong even in the vegetarian movement to not understand how cruel dairy is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The veterinarian continues to talk about veal, which Leah brought up. So it's a good way to segue to what she said. In veal production, calves are typically removed from their mothers immediately after birth. So maybe some of you listening are saying, well, when is it done in the dairy industry? Depends which dairy you're at, but the best case scenario is 24 to 36 hours, sometimes sooner. But that's the most a brand new baby gets with his or her mother. So back to the veal babies, immediately after birth, often before they have the opportunity to nurse, never experience, not even for a moment, experience bonding with your mother. Just come out, plop on the ground, and go into isolation, or ride on one of those wonderful trucks, those noisy trucks with other scared, screaming individuals such as yourself. I saw a post about a farmer like actually praising herself for being saying goodbye to her commodity animals as they're being trucked away. I've driven behind these trucks for hours just to see how horrific that ride is. Like, people just remove the transportation part out. If that was the only thing you did to those animals, you'd be an animal abuser. And then you get to the slaughterhouse. Anyway, Amy Allen continues, the argument that calves must be individually confined to prevent disease overlooks the fact that early colostrum intake is the most effective method of infection prevention. If the industry were genuinely concerned about calf health, allowing at least 24 hours of maternal nursing would significantly reduce morbidity and mortality rates. And here we go again. How many humans are going to take that sentence and go straight to, oh, well, I'm only going to buy it if they got 24 hours. God damn, people, you're taking babies from mothers. Just stop trying to find ways to continue to be shitty.
Killing babies and their mothers too.
Yeah.
And a specific here from an honest doubter, which I neglected to mention, which is good, is farmers allow calves to stay with their milk cows, or milkers, as they're sometimes called, only for one reason: to start her lactation. 2 to 3 days, then off to slaughter.
Oh, thank you.
Right? I mean, that's a nice point of clarification. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and if it's exactly how different do people think beef cows and dairy cows are for the people that bought into the bull crap that dairy calves don't need their moms or need to be protected from their mothers? Like, oh, it's well known that dairy calves love to stomp and eat baby cows.
Another great thing to always bring up is simply, it's 5 minutes. Watch Dairy is Scary. It's on YouTube. It has almost 7 million views around the world. And in 5 minutes, it shows from beginning to end the horrors of the dairy industry. So anyone watching that, and also the marketing and why we've all been conditioned and why we've all bought into it.
Great, Leah, great. Dairy is Scary. Go to YouTube, type in Dairy is Scary, folks. And I do want to read one comment here. I'm getting a kick out of this. Again, from Switzerland, Stephen Axelrod. An absolutely fascinating take on how humankind has arrived at this very reckless and dangerous point, which is all the stuff we're discussing here, is clearly offered in the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari in his gripping book. And, well, I'm not on the screen at the moment, but when I am, I'm holding that book in my hand, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. And it's fascinating for all sorts of reasons. But to my surprise, it does. Thank you, Skyler. Well done. It does touch on animal agriculture. Of course, it has to, because agriculture is a dramatic shift in humanity's evolution and our effect on the entire ecosystem, destroying it, basically. So thanks, Stephen. No surprise you and I are reading and fascinated with the same book. And I'm only about 200 pages into this monstrous book. It's so dense, I can't read it all at once. I read 5 pages and digest it, then 5 pages and digest it. Really good stuff.
For those of you interested in continuing the tour of Point Reyes, you are now looking at a dairy calf at McClure Dairy. Previously, you were looking at Mendoza. Interesting difference at Mendoza. They didn't even bother to put hay down. The calves just laid down in mud at night. Now here we are at McClure, and they're laying down in hay and their own feces, which of course is contributing to them being swarmed by flies. It wasn't a very pleasant experience visiting either of those dairies for different reasons, similar and different reasons.
I remember when I drove out there after there was a demonstration. Driving back home, I was compelled to stop at one of the ranches and at least kind of go up to some of the mother cows. Some of them were gathered by the road. And even that was a pretty heart-wrenching experience, because I know what they've already been through, and I know what they're about to go through, that soon a truck is going to come for them. But off in the distance were the dairy hutches, and they had been moved. You could just see them off in the distance, but they used to be right by the road. But now they know that people are getting a glimpse. Oh,
Yep.
they're starting to wonder, what is that about? People are hearing more about what are in those white little hutches. Oh, those are babies? So now they're being conveniently hid behind.
I remember specifically the day the McClure moved his.
Yeah.
Now that one on the left, we're back to Mendoza, and this calf broke my heart even more than the other ones. She was inside, and she made eye contact with me with fear, saw that, I don't know if she sensed that I wasn't like the rest of them or what, but came out and just was blinking her eyes at me like, what are you doing to me? What are you people doing to me? But she was also hungry. She came up to that little feeder thing that you see there that they stick the replacement milk into, and started licking it and making eye contact with me, telling me, hey, you know, for the people that want to pretend that these animals aren't intelligent, this animal's days old, and it took the challenge of figuring out how to communicate with us. Hey, I need this. And I noticed that you're the ones that give it to me, and this is where you put it. Days old. You know, I could argue that these animals are light years ahead of our own species, considering how absolutely pathetic we are years into our existences.
Yeah. By the way, Skyler, just because we're coming up the top of the hour, we can go past, but just I did send you a while I'm yapping at you, I just emailed you the graphic, the ad, the poster for the big Saturday, March 1st. Shorthand is Tule Elk Freedom Party, which is we're celebrating as a community here with all our disparate viewpoints, the Tule Elk herds being freed, and thousands of cows, 12 of the 14 ranches at Point Reyes being moved out, which is a major improvement. And if you have access to that, it'd be great to show. If not, I just wanted to say it.
But you need to say where it's happening exactly. So
well, I want to get people. Sure. Mill Valley Community Center, 1 o'clock. Thank you, Leah, to 4 o'clock, but starts at 1 o'clock. Mill Valley Community Center, which is Marin County across the bridge, easily accessible from San Francisco and from Berkeley, in the East Bay, Oakland, on March 1st. And that's on my event page of my website, which is probably the easiest one to find, which is treespiritproject.com, which is in the URL under my name right there, just //events. And you'll find more information about it. And it's a big deal. And just last night, I had an unpleasant, friction-filled conversation with an activist in this group who's been working on it for 20 years. I won't say name or even gender. It doesn't matter. Being lectured, please don't bring up the whole vegan thing. And you don't need to, lecture people about, dairy and all that. I'm like, wow. It just was like, I was so like,
not surprised.
Wow. I mean, not even like, you're going to say what you're going to say, Jack, and I don't think you should do that. It was more like, don't do this. This is wrong. Not understanding, like, this is the whole point. Otherwise, it's just NIMBY. We're going to fix Point Reyes, but put those cows right over there. Let me put the cows not in the park, but just move them over there, and everything's fine. Whereas nothing is resolved. Same amount of manure on the land, same water contamination, same greenhouse gas, methane emissions causing the climate crisis. And this person, intelligent, just refused, couldn't go there, and thinks I'm the crazy one. Thank you, Leah. Go for it.
Oh, just with the way it's framed, which is by us wanting to simply give the public the information. It's called lecturing, and it's called telling people what to eat. Right. We are giving information. I mean, would you have said that to feminists back in the day, that we're actually telling people that we don't like being second-class citizens? Stop lecturing us about what we get to do to you females. I mean, really. And then kind of labeling us as it's too extreme, it's too soon, one step at a time. We don't have much time left, is what I keep saying. I mean, even if you don't care about animals, the climate crisis, Was it UC Berkeley and Stanford just a year or two ago came out, peer-reviewed study, phasing out animal agriculture represents our best and most immediate chance at reversing climate change. So all this one step at a time, don't talk about it because we don't want to offend people. How people react is up to them. It's up to us as environmentalists and animal advocates to simply tell them the truth, not keep it from them because we're afraid that we might lose donors, lose supporters. So that means we just stay quiet? No.
And don't tell these people about science either, because that's really invasive of you. For example, and again, I'm putting this up just for the other angle. You know, we have the common sense angle of this, and then we have the scientific angle of this. There are studies, as was passed on me.
I don't even understand what this headline says. It's too. I'm not smart enough to understand that.
Well, you're right.
I'm serious.
Okay. Well, so it's scientific jargon in which humans felt it was their right to experiment with other creatures and show what sort of social disorders were developed by comparing calves that started life in isolation versus ones that didn't. And I mean, I'm just giving examples of how there is science to back up what we should already know. And I'm still waiting for someone in the comments to name one mammal that naturally does not have any maternal relationship. And the other study that obviously didn't get to today, but at least to whet people's appetites for the future, is this one is titled ARS demonstrates blah, blah, blah. This is basically bird flu that dairy cows are spreading. So we have another pandemic on our hands. And once again, it is originating from high population captivity situations of an industry that shouldn't even exist.
Animal farming.
Yes, animal farming. And, you know, we were talking about, I made the joke earlier about how even if we were carnivores, we should look at this and say, well, how can we get around this? I actually believe it would be a dream for farm animals to live the way wild animals do and die the way wild animals do. Like if they died at the hands of a lion, that would be an absolute day at the spa compared to experiencing what human beings do to creatures in order to eat their flesh. Like we create shocking amounts of misery in order to pretend to be carnivores. Confinement, just never even exercising, never seeing the sun in many cases, all to justify stupid crap like eating these products that then Clover has to turn around and take vegan flavoring and add to their dairy product, you know, strawberry, vanilla, all of these things. That's vegan. These flavors that you love so much, already provided to us by nature, but you want to add it to misery for some reason. And the meat we were talking about earlier, you know, the spices, most of what actually makes that meat fun to eat.
From plants.
From plants. How about the masculinity of it, the hot stuff? Guess what? All those hot sauces, plants. It's all plant-based.
Yep. Yep.
So we're at, let's see, 10:03. Do we want to continue or do we want to wrap up and keep it to a neat hour-ish?
I'll at least read Amy Allen's last paragraph.
Okay.
And then Leah has something to add.
Yeah, just one last thing.
Amy Allen's last paragraph. Instead, the primary motivation for early separation is to divert milk for human consumption, maximizing dairy industry profits. The subsequent isolation of veal calves in restrictive crates serves not to protect their health, but rather to limit movement and induce muscle weakness. Now, I said that there is an overlap because this is taking place with the dairy calves, whether or not that is a goal or not. When you're not allowed to use your muscles, they're not going to develop. And I guess that's one of the reasons that it like really kind of shook me into my core to see an animal the same age running freely and fully capable of already using those muscles that the other ones aren't allowed to use. Producing the pale, tender meat that commands a high market value. Oh, aren't we so superior? We found a way to market the misery of babies. Scientific research has demonstrated that individual confinement leads to increased stress indicators and greater susceptibility to disease due to chronic stress-induced immunosuppression. Do we really need science to tell us that?
Thank you.
I'm glad that it's there. But you know what else is coming out in the scientific community? Actual studies showing that going to the beach is good for you, that people, I'm not lying. And I was in the shark industry. I had a scientist get away with producing a study that being hunted by a shark creates stress in seals. These things are getting published, and we're the most intelligent species.
Well, they're not only published, they're getting funded as a study.
Yep.
So I remember reading the Science Times. New research proves water is wet.
Right. Honest Doubter, thank you. He or she is saying, just watch Dairy is Scary and sent to a few vegan curious friends. Thanks for the information. I mean, it's crucial that people see it. And in regards to the veal, yeah, I mean, just this, folks, if you realize that the reason veal is seen as a delicacy is because the meat is more tender. Why is it more tender? Because they purposely torture baby calves so that they can't stand up or build any muscle. So that tortured flesh is veal. Anyway, I just wanted to say before we wrap up, to just again plant another seed in people's minds that I think so many people in this area, you go to Whole Foods, right? You see the 5-step animal welfare certified, it's called Global Animal Partnership. And the whole meat section and dairy section makes you feel so good about, oh, I'm buying from Whole Foods. It's organic and it has a 5-step animal welfare rating, right? That has just been exposed yet again, but by one of the largest animal rights organizations in the world. That Humane Society has been promoting it. So as the ASPCA, animal protection organizations who really just focus on dogs and cats, but they are actively promoting the humane scam, making people feel better about buying animal products by saying, well, if you're going to buy them, buy the animal welfare certified. Oh, perfect. Great. So just keep in mind, folks, when you go into the grocery store and you see these animal welfare certified labels, there's practically no regulation. There's no enforcement. Why? Because farmed animals do not have any legal rights.
So the entire system at Whole Foods, in a nutshell for Jack, is it's all BS. I wanted to read a Karen Lee's comment. I've witnessed a mother cow running around Coleman Valley Road, bellowing frantically and searching for her baby. We went to a neighbor and reported this, and she said she's a first timer. I'm guessing that means in context that cow, that was the first time she's had her baby taken away. So she was freaking out as opposed to accepting her fate and doing nothing about it because she's so broken spiritually.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing that.
Jack, we talked about the vacant gaze in previous episodes, and I said, of course, how do you not reach that point?
I'm sorry, the vacant gaze? I didn't get that.
Vacant gaze.
Got it. Vacant gaze. Sorry, that's different. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All lies. Yeah.
Just the vacant gaze of the cows whose spirit is broken, you mean?
I mean, yeah. How much abuse can a human or anyone take before the light just disappears behind their eyes? And we do that. We, the superior species, use our intelligence as a justification to do that, to make the light go out behind the eyes of other creatures.
Exactly.
Well, here's another topic for another show, but I want to plant this really contentious seed. I just pitched to the person. Let me leave names out of this again. I knew I would get crickets as a response, but to an incredible vegan activist whom I very much admire, running a Eugene Vegan Fest, I said, well, I consider coming up. I'd love to give a talk, and I would title that talk, "Don't Call It an Animal Holocaust," parenthesis, even though it is.
Yep.
And I know that that's a bridge too far, even for some fellow activists. I'm Jewish, so I can go to the word Holocaust and work with it. But I didn't get a response yet. It's like, oh, no, Jack, don't even go there. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show one day.
God, Jack, did you see the video I did comparing the marching of the animals in the food industry to Schindler's List? You better go watch. You better go watch that.
That sounds funny, Skyler. I'd love to see that. Would you share that link with me separately? Don't share it with the audience. That's too much. Let them beg for it if they want it.
I feel like today was a heated enough topic that we should allow at least one caller or see if anyone wants to call for a minute. Go ahead and read some comments. And I'm going to put the
doubter, $38 billion in annual government subsidies to meat and dairy industry in the USA. But these dolt carnists, that's good, try to claim the powers that are the powers that be are pushing anti-meat agendas. No, of course, the powers that be in the industry is absolutely all in billions of dollars of pushing their propaganda, their lies. Thank you, honest doubter.
Yeah, the difference in subsidies that go to the meat and dairy industry versus the subsidies that go to plant farming directly for humans is absolute insanity. So that's the only reason why people think it's relatively cheap, these animal products. It's because they're so heavily subsidized by us taxpayers.
And you're looking at McClure Dairy again, by the way, if you want to know. And somebody said to me, "Oh my God, is he bleeding? Did they abuse it?" And no, that's paint. They mark them for their value or whatever it is that they do by the paint. But I just love the fact that humans don't think the abuse has begun. And unless they've been beaten or stabbed or something.
Right. Baby cow is fine all alone in the hutch, but if we saw some blood, then there's need for concern. Yeah.
And they're mutilated, their horns are burned off, the mothers are branded with hot irons, branded numbers into their skin. So speaking of Holocaust, there's the connection, everybody.
Well, do you know that the German Holocaust, sorry, you guys are going to pull me into this, but they actually studied animal abattoirs to determine how best to kill lots of people of the Jewish persuasion and, of course, many other persuasions as well, not just 6 million Jews. Don't let me get me started, kids.
And now pigs, the number one most common method of stunning pigs and killing them, gas chambers.
Yep. I've watched those videos of them screaming as they're lowered into this underground gas chamber. I can't even believe human beings invent shit like that. No. What in the actual hell is wrong with you? And you turn around and call these people good, the salt of the earth, the farmers providing for us. Holy shit.
Stewards of the land. And the 5-step animal welfare rating in Whole Foods, it's called the GAP that you see on so many animal products. They approve of that too. They approve of the gas chambers, everybody. So does the Humane Society and the SPCA because they're promoting those animal welfare certifications.
So we're wrapping up the vegan radio hour of 75 minutes with Skyler Thomas of Watching Humans and his YouTube station on which this podcast is based. The wonderful Leah Wilborn, animal rights advocate.
I don't know. I'm a human. I'm a human. I speak up for animals. I don't know what you want to call me.
Okay, yeah. As a gal who speaks up for animals.
And humans too. I was a human rights activist before I became even more involved in the animal rights.
Well, one could argue because it would be the truth that if humans stopped eating animals, that humans would stop destroying their own planet. But that's just fact. And I'm Jack Gescheit of the Tree Spirit Project. And please come on March 1st to Saturday, March 1st, 1 p.m., Mill Valley Community Center for a celebration. Well, we all three will be there, plus another 100 at least activists who were involved in the Point Reyes issue, but beyond that as well, to celebrate a rare win in the environmental movement, which is thousands fewer cows at Point Reyes Seashore and freed elk for the first time since they were reintroduced to the seashore in 1978.
I don't know if there's a delay. Sometimes there's a delay. I see comments show up after we've signed off, so I'm letting.
We were just called militant vegan terrorists.
She's joking. She's joking.
I know.
Yeah. MVTs. We're MVTs.
If people didn't see the call-in link, it's in the comments. I put it up there twice. Last chance to call. I know Sledge usually has something to add.
Oh, he did. He threw in a bunch of comments earlier, but he was going off into politics, and I'm always throwing in things from left field. I didn't want to go further afield.
I will say that 38 billion is less than the number I heard. I think Canada was 70 billion. Mm-hmm. But I can't even contemplate 1 billion. So 38 billion is as if that's not enough for people to get upset. I mean, 38 billion funding the death of the planet and misery of animals. But hey, we are wolves. I mean, look at us.
There you go again, Skyler. So
well, there was a statistic of 60 billion between 1995 and 2015 or 2020, and 127 million. So compare 127 million for plant-based crops and alternatives and proteins to 60 billion for animal agriculture.
Say it one more time.
Subsidies. These are give them
what were the numbers
here.
Yeah, it was 60. Look up Environmental Working Group. It's a paper that came out. So since 1995, $60 billion in subsidies have gone to animal agribusiness. And since 2001, only 127 million.
Jeez,
so 127 million versus 60 billion.
And I always think it's interesting to point out to people that part of the subsidies goes to the marketing. Like our government actually pays for this industry to advertise itself, which means our government pays to help lie. Jack, we owe ourselves an entire episode looking at those Clover advertisements. Every single one of them is a blatant lie.
Let's do it next week. Let's do it next week. I'd love to do that. In fact, oh God, it used to be that even since Reagan era, when I came aware politically that industry is in bed with government. Well, now with the new administration, they're actively humping in bed. And you have a new nickname, Skyler, from Karen. It's Wolfie.
Oh.
And Sledge reminds us a little bit of housekeeping. Hit the thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm to push this show out to more people. So you folks who are wonderful supporters and advocates as we are for this important information to get out, this Skyler will post this show within the hour on his YouTube Watching Humans channel. If you go there and throw one more chat in, we'll all respond back. More chats and more thumbs up and more activity from us after the fact will push the algorithm to get the show out to more people.
Karen is saying, yes, do Clover, please. I have a whole presentation on humane washing, not that I'm proposing doing it here, and an entire page on In Defense of Animals website about the humane scam. So I'm always available to talk about that.
And I have some fun Clover graphics. I did some spoof posters.
Yes. Then there's a humane washing machine.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Did.
But just so you know, Skyler, next Tuesday, I don't know whether we're proposing, well, we always figure out after the show, folks, what we're going to do the following week, because that's how with it we are. But I'm going to be busy producing the March 1st event, so I won't have as much bandwidth to do much. So if we can decide that sooner than later, that'd be great. What next Tuesday will be, and even the Tuesday after that.
Okay.
Thank you, all of our viewers.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, Leah. Thank you, Skyler, for hosting as always. And